welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks since the last video. Just a brief life update. I've been dissociating frequently. That's a bit irrelevant to this video, but I would like to tell you that this is the freshest that I've looked in that time. It's been a long, hard few weeks, and I hope you appreciate the time that I have taken out to do this video, because I think that it's a really important topic to me, and I think that it's a really important topic for a lot of people. I want to talk about gender today. Gender is something that I feel like I've avoided talking about for a while because I don't really know too much about it. It's not really something that I spend a lot of time researching. It is something that I have been researching more in recent months just because it's become a point of interest for me as I look more and more into it. Initially, I feel like I was avoiding it because discussing gender and the fluidity of gender online is a bit chaotic, and I feel like no one wins in that conversation. Every single time I've tried to have a conversation online about it, it's just sort of devolved, and that's upsetting because I do like involving myself in conversations I'm an ignoramus in, because I go into conversations wanting to learn. And I don't think that that's the fault of any party that those conversations devolve into chaos. I think that most conversations on the internet devolve into chaos because that is the culture that we have created. But anyway, hi, I'm a cisgender woman. Hooray, another one of me talking about gender. And I know how that looks. I also know how it looks while, like, me starting this whole video saying that I don't know enough about this topic. But I think that I've understood some things to a certain degree, and I want to explain my sort of journey to this conclusion, as well as like explain what I feel about it. And I genuinely believe that the gender binary at this point, we should be breaking it. And I know that it's a very contentious issue for almost no reason, because it shouldn't matter at this point what gender you are in the 21st century, in 2022. It shouldn't matter, but it clearly still does, because people make a stink about people wanting to be anything other than a man or anything other than a woman, and even transitioning into one of those genders is a contentious topic for so many people, and it's just annoying. In the time that I haven't been talking about this online, I have been doing my own like personal research into it, as well as my own soul searching, because I did have a lot of transphobic thoughts and feelings, especially in like the last few years. Obviously, like before that, I was still a radical, so I had very, very controversial views on everything. But since de-radicalizing and since becoming more aware of the world around me and deciding what I want to believe and where my morals were, I've had to do a lot of soul searching on this topic, because I've had to confront a lot of biases that I had against people who weren't cis men or cis women, is essentially what I'm saying. And it certainly didn't help that I watched a lot of Blair White content. Like, I watched a lot of Blair White content. I started watching her content when like Anision was still around, and she did a lot of like Anision takedowns, and I kind of just started watching a lot of her content from there. Because she was a trans person, that's where I got all my trans information from, and now I realize that that was a terrible source of information. Actually, there is a video by D'Angelo Wallace who was also a Blair White fan, and he did a good takedown video of her content and why it's harmful to trans people, and I'll leave that link in the description. I've identified that the feelings that I had about trans people were wrong, and I needed to invest more time into listening to them and understanding their struggle, because as a cis woman, that just isn't something that I come across. Yeah, I'm an alternate person, but I'm still a cis woman, and that comes with a certain level of privilege, and that privilege also includes just being ignorant about issues surrounding gender outside of cis women and cis men. You know what truly awakened me to realize that Blair was wrong? Like, that nothing comes from being a bitter conservative pick-me. Like, nothing. Was I watched this, and this was after I kind of stopped watching her content, but I was still interested to see this debate. There was a debate that she participated in with other conservatives. Throughout that debate, like throughout the whole thing, and I'll put some clips in here, but I have to warn you, they have no compunctions about being transphobic, and they are very transphobic to her. And when I watched that debate, I just was so blown away by how they can't even have a modicum of respect for someone that believes everything that they do. Like, the only difference is that Blair is a trans woman, and they could not respect that at all, not one time. And it was just really, really, really gross. I'll leave the link for the full debate down below, but I do have to warn you that if you're sensitive to transphobic language and stuff like that, you shouldn't watch it.
And, I think it's really funny that she's quoting scripture as a liberal, thinking that she can use it against us as Christians. It's like, oh, it doesn't apply to me, but maybe it'll work on you. And guess what? It doesn't work. Playing on our Christian compassion and making us be tolerant and acceptive of all this diversity, you know what that's left us with? Transgender on Twitter saying that your daughter asked for it. Your little girl isn't actually a princess. She asked for it when I abused her. You cannot play the Christian compassion card on us anymore. We are standing. We are taking a stand. Will the party, we already have a transgender man, woman, I don't know, in California running the Federation for Republican Women. And when it comes down to it, I choose preserving the life of little children who are 15% of them are growing up identifying as LGBTQ and transgender, and we should not be giving a spotlight to or a platform to people who operate in a lifestyle where 40% of them end up attempting, eventually.
I just want to specifically address what said about children maybe watching my YouTube videos and thinking that they can be like me or transition or whatever. I don't really know how much you know about me, but I'm probably the most vocal anti-children transitioning person on the internet. It's what I'm. Right. I'll let you speak.
The best thing you can do for us is grow out your mustache and tell people not to live like you. That is the best thing that you can do to help us, because
Christ
you are not helping.
Christ love, wafting off Christ love.
Go at it, guys.
I think actually to close on the biblical point, the first thing I did want to say is the vindication of Lauren's point comes very clear.
Seeing that really made me feel like Blair has to be wrong. She has to be wrong. In every other debate that she has participated in, she's always come across as very dominant in the conversation, and in this, she just appears to be very docile and unable to confront the idea that these people are so disrespectful to her. I don't know, I felt really bad. Like, I don't agree with most of the things that she says now, but I felt very bad for her. And like, I'm not the most forgiving person in the world. I think that a lot of people who have fallen out with me know that, but I had some sympathy for that. I don't know, it was just very heartbreaking to watch that, and very hard also to watch that, because she's usually just such a strong person, even if, she's a controversial person. But anyway, now I've started watching more non-binary creators and a lot of trans creators. Two of my favorites are Cat Black and Jessie Gender. I watch their content all the time, and I'll be referencing one of Jessie Gender's videos later in this video. But for here and now, I want to read out a Margaret Atwood quote that just haunts me every single day. Every single day I wake up and I think about this, and it haunts me, and I want this quote to set the tone for the rest of the video. Male fantasies. Is everything run by male fantasies? Up upon a pedestal or down on your knees, it's all a male fantasy. That you're strong enough to take what they dish out, or else too weak to do anything about it. Even pretending you aren't catering to male fantasies is a male fantasy. Pretending you're unseen, pretending you have a life of your own, that you can wash your feet and comb your hair unconscious of the ever-present watcher, peering through the keyhole in your own head, if nowhere else. You are a woman with a man inside watching a woman. You are your own voyeur. Haunting stuff. Chilling stuff. I think I mentioned in my last video, like, stuff that people say to me or stuff that people have written cycles in my head. They stick in my brain and they don't leave. And obviously Margaret Atwood didn't directly say this to me, but I heard this in a different video. I think it was one about the male gaze. I've forgotten who the creator of it was, but it was a really, really good video. I think it was Jordan Teresa, I'm not sure. This quote has not left my brain since that day. And I think that this quote briefly and quite succinctly exemplifies why we should break the gender binary, like why it shouldn't exist. Jessie Gender, who I mentioned before, has a really good video where she breaks down TERF ideology. And for those of you who don't understand TERF ideology, it was really, really easy to consume this video and understand it immediately, where she was coming from as a trans person, explaining the TERF ideology. And in that video, she explains that radical feminism was originally in favor of destroying the gender binary, because the gender binary is what oppresses women and what keeps men toxic.
Patriarchal society framework generally frames men as the oppressing group and women as the oppressed. And to state the obvious, by the way, because this is sadly social media and it requires me to be overt, this is not saying that all men are misogynist pigs who hate women. Some can be, we've all seen the Ferengi.
But I will not stand here and be spoken to by a female.
Nor is it saying that every single man always benefits from the general oppression of women in these societies. In patriarchies, men are oppressors, women oppressed. Radical feminists, however, focus in on that power dynamic of men being part of the oppressing class and women being the oppressed. That this structure leads to men being able to have more say and agencies in women's bodies than women do in their own bodies. And I'm not just talking about things like abortion or contraception, by the way, access to those things as well, but where women's bodies are allowed to be, like in high-paying jobs or just access to certain spaces, or who gets to have agency in things like sex, for example, who gets to decide whose pleasure is more important during those acts. Is down to the idea that men have more power and agency and right to a woman's body than a woman does to her own. And radical feminism focuses on how this general power structure gets established through the concept of gender. We all get assigned a gender at birth, most often a masculine or feminine gender, man or woman. And we assign these genders based on the genitals that you're born with. If you're born with a penis, you'll be a man in this society. If you're born with a vagina, you'll be assigned a woman at birth. And if you're born intersex, well, someone, probably your doctor or parents, will pick a gender for you of those two and probably, sadly, give you a surgery that you did not consent to make you appear to have one or the other type of genitalia, which is, not awesome. But I think we can all agree on this, yes? That if you're born with a penis, people will tell you that you're a man, that you have that big, strong penis energy. Yeah, fuck everything. Yeah, quite literally. And if you're born with a vagina, people will say, that there's a pretty lady. So, if we understand this general idea that men are oppressors and women are oppressed in a patriarchal society, and we also accept the idea that we choose if someone is which gender at birth based on their genitals, then it's pretty clear that genitals play a huge role in if someone is placed in the oppressed or oppressing class at birth. That someone's genitals at birth will heavily influence whether they are grouped into an oppressing or oppressed class and which privileges they are given access to or denied. And it would make sense that if you view things this way, as radical feminists do, then the goal should be to try to stop society from defining people's access to rights based on genitals. As radical feminist Shulamith Firestone wrote in 1970,
"The end goal of feminist revolution must be, unlike that of the first feminist movement, not just the elimination of male privilege, but of sex distinction itself. Genital differences between human beings would no longer matter culturally."
You see, while we all agree that genitals determine your gender at birth, people argue over how gender assignment relates to how we experience gender in our societies, as a social construct or if it's inherent in our bodies. The body side of the argument is the one that seems to make the most common sense to many of us, right? That if you're born with certain biological markers like chromosomes, XX or XY, then it determines what types of characteristics that you are given and what genitals you have. But is that the end of it? Because, and we all know, and trans people agree with this by the way, no trans person is arguing against this, though TERFs will say that we are, that biology determines certain aspects of our physical makeup. Like I said, genitals most typically is thought of having a penis or a vagina, but it also could be things like getting boobs when you're younger, or broad shoulders, or different things that you experience when you go through puberty. But do those biological markers determine our gender? Yes, they may determine certain sex characteristics, but gender might be something different. Because we talked about before gender being discussion of how we are treated by society as a boy or girl, which group that we are placed into. I am not saying that I don't understand this fear. I most certainly do. I can and have felt as a woman what it's like to be afraid of being assaulted, especially in a place that's supposed to be safe. It's like a horror movie, this idea that the safest place to be, the place where you allow yourself to be your most vulnerable, is the place where you're going to be attacked. But let me be clear. Clear? Suddenly became Irish here. But let me be clear. No matter what rights you give to women, assault and abuse will still be and always have been illegal. If, for example, a man does claim to be a trans woman and enters a bathroom and assaults a woman, that is a thing that can be prosecuted criminally. But on top of all of that, there have been no recorded cases of trans women assaulting people and women in the bathroom. So to deny trans people access to just using the bathroom in a public space is just attacking trans people to attack trans people. And using this fear-mongering tactic about men invading women's spaces is not only flat-out lies, but expressly transphobic. In fact, both trans women and cis women face increased rates of sexual assault in our society anywhere, not just in the bathroom. Trans women are just as open to abuse as cis women. In fact, they often face more abuse because we are trans. Yet by arguing differently, by putting transgender women's bodily autonomy underneath cisgender women's bodily autonomy, they are subtly denying trans women humanities over cis women's.
Whether or not you choose to believe it, gender is a social construct, and being a man or being a woman is baked into tradition and culture, and it varies from culture to culture. What is expected of you as a man and what is expected of you as a woman. And it's very... I hate it. I don't know why this exists, except that it just benefits men. I'm going to go on a tangent, but stick with me. Just bear with me and humor me for a moment. I'm going to talk about video game. It's relevant, but I need to explain some stuff before I get there. So one of my favorite games of all time that I never finished is called Nier Automata, or Automata. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it, but it's called Nier Automata. You'll like it too if you like long hack and slash boss fights and just pure dystopian aesthetics. But one of the things that I love about the game is that almost every character is an android or a machine, and every character is named after a philosopher or thinker in history. And one of the bosses that I found interesting is called Simone, and this is what she looks like. She is the only Nier Automata boss that has this aesthetic, like that has the aesthetic of a woman, right? Every other boss kind of just keeps their machine aesthetic and it's not clear if they're trying to fit into a gender conformity. But Simone exemplifies the way that this machine has tried to construct itself into a woman. And Simone is named after a famous French existential philosopher called Simone de Beauvoir. I think that's how you pronounce it. She was a French existentialist philosopher, and y'all know how much I love existentialist philosophy. And she was a feminist activist. She wrote The Second Sex, and she was one of the, like the founding thinkers of the first wave feminism. She is also sometimes more known for her lifelong relationship with Jean-Paul Sartre, who is another French philosopher, but it should also be noted that his work can't really be deciphered without Simone's. So who's the better philosopher? Simone de Beauvoir famously wrote in The Second Sex that one is not born, but rather becomes a woman. One is not born, but rather becomes a woman. That's a lot to unpack. Like, I get that that's loaded, right? Like, I feel like if there are any conservatives or people who don't, like, think that everything that I've said so far is just bullshit, is in the audience, they're going to be like, oh my god, here we go with the feminist rhetoric, right? Like, oh my, what does it mean to become a woman? The difference between sex and gender is overstated. I feel like it's been gone over so many times, and I can't believe I'm repeating it. But your sex is determined by your genitals when you are born. Gender, first of all, is a social construct, and your gender is the role that you play in whatever body you are born with, in terms of like men, women, and whatever else falls on that spectrum. And it is a spectrum. Everyone falls somewhere on that spectrum. Some people are hypermasculine, some people are hyperfeminine, but also remember, and a lot of people fall in between, but also remember that concepts like masculine and feminine are also socially constructed. Like, we're not just born and immediately think, oh, I'm going to be a girly girl. That's not how that works. You have things that you like, and you have aesthetics that you want to choose, and those things shouldn't have gender assigned to them. They just shouldn't. If we want to live in a free world, we need to encourage people to make decisions free of those constraints. In terms of how does one become a woman, there are some really interesting quotes that Simone says in the game, as a machine that's, become a woman. That gives us an idea of how an essentially sexless machine, like this machine has no sex, constructed her identity into human womanhood. She says things like, beauty is pretty skin, beauty is stylish accessories, beauty is looking one's best. I will become beautiful, I will do it for him. I lost my parts obtaining this beautiful jewel. I lost myself, but my wounds are badges. It is physically impossible to obtain beauty by consuming an android, but I tried anyway. I would try anything. I wanted to vomit, but I kept going. Not a moment passed where I didn't strive to become more beautiful, but he still won't look my way. Someone, please look my way. Why have I done this to myself? Meaningless, meaningless, meaningless. I gaze into the mirror. In its reflection, I see only my own meaningless, and so I scream. There's another video that dives a bit deeper into the philosophical discussion about feminism and Nier Automata, and I would highly recommend you watch it. It's a great video. I loved watching it. Don't agree with everything that's said in it, but it's a pretty cool video. You should check it out. In terms of what Simone says in this game, if you've ever had like an eating disorder, or you've ever had body dysmorphia, or you've had trouble accepting your body, or even if you've ever made stupid and taxing changes to your body or your personality for a man, I feel like this would resonate with you, because it resonates with me. I spent most of my life, wishing I was born a boy for loads of reasons, because I was also, brought up in a very religious household, but also because it wasn't that I didn't want to be a woman. It was because what being a woman means. It means that I always have to look at my body. I always have to look at how I'm dressed, and I always nitpick that. Like, I'm always self-conscious, and I'm always, thinking about whether I'm making choices to please others or if I'm doing it because I like it. That removes so much control from you, because you can't answer that question. It's an unanswerable question. Like that Margaret Atwood quote, how much control do you actually have over the male gaze that you put over your own body as a woman? How much control do you have over that? There are definitely criticisms to the quote, obviously, because it removes agency. It's a bit infantilizing, whatever. But if we suspend our disbelief for 5 seconds and really think about it, how many of the choices that you make about dressing your body and constructing your appearance, how much of that thought process is truly for you? Like me wearing this makeup, how much of this is for me? Because if I wasn't making this video and I just had a day off and I was just staying by myself, 50% of the time I would not have worn this. So who am I wearing this for? It also means that as a woman, I'm always expected to behave a certain way. I'm always expected to face a stigma and not complain. I'm always expected to be more submissive. Like that's just the expectation that I found with so many men, and even amongst other women that have asserted their dominance over me in the workplace, in my family. You know, because I'm a woman, there was always this expectation that I had to be compliant. If I complained, then I was just a bitchy woman, you know? It also means that being a woman means that I have to spend a lifetime, like a whole lifetime, fighting with men about womanness, fighting with men about stuff that I know to be true. The amount of times I've fought with men that I've dated about, like, my period. Like, you don't know shit about my period. You don't know shit about anybody's period. Why are you telling me about my period? You know, men who will invalidate the struggle of childbearing and pregnancy and raising a child, and not understanding that childbearing and pregnancy and giving birth to a child is very, very much a part of being a woman. Like, it's very much a part of being a woman, and I'm sick of men downplaying the severity of that. Like, being pregnant is such a severe way to be. Like, it killed so many women before we figured out modern medicine, and a lot of that is downplayed. The fact that in America you still don't even really have parental leave after you have a child is so backward. Like, America is a Western country. America claims to be this bastion of freedom and all this, but we're not equal. We're just not equal. Aside from America, I like shitting on America because it's easy to point out the flaws over there, and everything in, like, the UK is done a lot more sneakily. But, like, women aren't equal here either, and they're not treated the same. I feel like a lot of the complaints that we make are sort of superficially referenced by corporate entities and then, like, forgotten for most of the year. And, like, fighting with men about womanness is inherently part of being a woman, and it sucks. Like, it fucking sucks. And I grew up wishing that I was born a boy because of all of that. I grew up watching my mom fight with my dad about, like, sanitation, pads and tampons and stuff like that, and my dad would just be like, oh, you know, just use toilet paper. Do you know anything? Do you know anything? Like, what do you mean? I wish my mom was around so I could thank her, because she steered me away from, like, engaging in too much aesthetic fixations. Like, when I was younger, I would constantly shave my body, and my mom would constantly tell me not to do that. Sorry, I needed to take a crying break. I wish she was around so I could thank her for, like, telling me not to worry about my weight, and that it didn't matter, because what you do matters. What you look like and what you are, or what you are assigned to be, does not matter. What you do does. And it shouldn't matter. It matters today because we make it a point of disparity. Like, the world is constructed in a way where if you are in a certain group, you will experience some level of stigma and some level of disparity, and life will be unfair to you. But in an ideal world, it should not matter. And it's unfortunate that it does. I just gotta burn through the last of this. Oh my god. I can't ever talk about my mum anymore. The pains of being a tearful woman and having a mood disorder also. But anyway, this is all, at least in part, a product of a strict gender binary and this obsolete idea that we have to be men or we have to be women. It's just so outdated and so restrictive, and I don't know why anybody continues to perpetuate it, especially women. I don't know why women perpetuate it. The bodies... Why should we resign ourselves to believing that the bodies that we're born into, the bodies that we have no choice over, has to define the way that we behave, and has to define our appearance, and has to define our choices? Fuck that. I don't get it. And it's like, knowing this has broken my brain a little bit. As you can probably tell. I look good today. I don't want to cry. Just taking a meditation set, like 5 seconds, please. This is stupid. You define who you are. Gender shouldn't even be considered in that definition of yourself, because you didn't choose that. The gender binary. Let's burn that big down. I want to live in a world where people can just be themselves. And it doesn't have to be something political. Like just existing and choosing how to look and choosing how to be and choosing, you know, how to exist. It shouldn't be so hard. It shouldn't be such a point of contention. Women want to do certain things. A person, you know, wants to identify as non-binary. A person wants to transition into the gender that they are. Like, this shouldn't be a point of contention at all. And I don't get why it is. Because if someone has no choice over what they are, what gives you the right to tell them that they aren't that? Because they have no control over it. That's fucked up. And I hope that if any of you people who feel that way are watching this, I hope that you know that it's fucked up. I want to end on a quote from Simone de Beauvoir's Second Sex, and it's a bit of a depressing quote, I'll admit, because this is a bit of a serious and depressing I mean, I cried in it, so there you go. If they, women, want to flirt or initiate a friendship, they should carefully avoid giving the impression that they are taking the initiative. Men do not like tomboys, nor blue stockings, nor thinking women. Too much audacity, culture, intelligence, or character frightens them. To be feminine is to show oneself as weak, futile, passive, and docile. The girl is supposed not only to primp and dress herself up, but also to repress her spontaneity and substitute for it the grace and charm that she has been taught by her elder sisters. Any self-assertion will take away from her femininity and her seductiveness. And isn't that just fucked up? Men have been saying from the time of Aristotle that women are inferior to men. And those guys. We worship these men. We worship them for the philosophy that they brought us. But we don't realize that they were men that said the same thing that men today say about women. That we're less than them, that we need to be treated differently, that we need to be looked on differently, that we have to behave in a certain way, and that if we misbehave, we have to be reprimanded. And there are men that behave like that. I will not hear all this, or not all men bullshit, okay? Men are garbage, and I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of it. I can't believe I ever wanted to be a man, just because it was hard to be a woman. Like, that is a point of shame for me. It shouldn't be, but it is. It's time for change. And I hope that this video has been a catalyst in some small incremental way to make way for that change. If someone as ignorant and as bigoted as I was, like I was really ignorant and really bigoted, like even I was bad. I was really bad. If I can change, then I believe that anyone else can too. And unlike gender, that is something you can choose. And if you are choosing the opposite, you are choosing actively to be a dickhead about this. And I don't know why. I don't know why. Also, I wanted to clarify, because I've just realized I said some heated things about pregnancy, and I realized that, you know, trans men also have the plumbing to technically get pregnant, and I don't want to invalidate them. I was just very heated, and it was something that really triggered me recently. I don't really want to get into it because people don't like it when I talk about my personal life, but it was something that I got really heated about recently. So please forgive me. I'm still learning all of my terms and stuff like that. I'm not good at stuff like that. I'm working on it, I promise. But anyway, sorry for crying. Sorry. Can't control it, got a mood disorder. But if you liked this video, if you found it good, it's such a shit video. If you liked this video, I hope you like it and you share it. Don't talk to me about it. I'm very embarrassed about my performance today. Oh, self-deprecation is the best form of humor. And make sure you like, share, subscribe. Leave your comments down below. I will read them. I know I'm not really embarrassed. I'll get over this in a few seconds. I'm just like, I haven't cried in a video in so long. It's been like 3 years since I did something like that. So yeah, I hope you found this informative, because it's just me, an idiot, trying to convey to other idiots that this isn't that hard to understand. And I hope that I've simplified it for you with like my pop culture references and like my references to vague understandings of philosophy, because that's how I understand philosophy, in vague increments. I'm not I speak like an intellectual because I know all the fancy words, but I'm a fucking moron. And like, if a moron like me can get it, I hope that other morons can understand it too, from my moronic way of explaining it. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you had a good time. To my editor, please don't cut out any of the self-deprecating shit. Like, I know you have creative control, but please, like, it's important to me that you keep it in. It's important to my audience also that you keep it in. But yeah, thank you for watching. And I will see you in the next one, and hopefully I won't cry next time. Bye.